Have you ever wondered what ignited the long-standing Israel-Palestine conflict? Picture a world stage set in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, an era when empires were crumbling and nationalism was on the rise. Two significant movements emerged during this time: Zionism and Arab nationalism. Zionism, a Jewish nationalist movement, was born out of the desire to establish a homeland for Jews in response to centuries of persecution. Theodor Herzl, a prominent figure in the movement, held the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland in 1897, and the dream of a Jewish state in Palestine was born. Simultaneously, Arab nationalism started to gain momentum. The Arabs, who'd been under Ottoman rule for centuries, began to yearn for independence and self-determination. The goal was a united Arab state, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Arabian Sea. The stage was set for a clash of aspirations. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, a public statement issued by the British government, further complicated matters. It expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while promising that nothing would be done to prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities. In 1922, the League of Nations granted Britain the mandate for Palestine, giving it control over the region. The mandate incorporated the Balfour Declaration, and Britain was tasked with facilitating the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. However, the Arab majority saw this as a betrayal of their nationalist aspirations. Tensions between the Jewish and Arab communities escalated as Jewish immigration increased. Each side held deep historical, religious, and cultural ties to the land, and each saw the other as a threat to their national aspirations. Thus, a potent brew of nationalism, colonialism, and conflicting promises set the stage for the eventual conflict. The land of ancient history and sacred significance became a battleground for two peoples' dreams of nationhood. The seeds of conflict were sown, and a tumultuous future awaited. How did the nation of Israel come into being amidst such turmoil? This question takes us back to the immediate aftermath of the Second World War, a time when the world was reeling from the horror of the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews perished. In those years, the Jewish people, survivors of unimaginable atrocities, sought a safe haven. Many turned their eyes to Palestine, a land familiar from biblical times, a land that had been a home to Jewish communities for centuries. Palestine, under British mandate since the end of the First World War, saw a significant influx of Jewish immigrants in the mid-40s. However, the land was not empty. It was shared by Arab Palestinians, who had also called it home for centuries. This led to tensions, conflicts, and eventually violence between the Jewish immigrants and the Arab Palestinians. In an attempt to find a solution, the United Nations stepped in. In November of 1947, the UN proposed a partition plan. The idea was simple, yet revolutionary. Divide the land into an Arab state and a Jewish state, with Jerusalem under international administration. The Jewish Agency for Palestine accepted the plan, but it was rejected by the Arab League and Palestinian Arab leadership. Despite the rejection, the wheels of change were already in motion. On the 14th of May 1948, the last British High Commissioner left Palestine. On that same day, the Jewish People's Council gathered in Tel Aviv. In a historic moment, they proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel, marking the birth of a new nation in the midst of strife and turmoil. The world's reaction was mixed. While the United States and Soviet Union quickly recognized the new state, neighboring Arab nations did not. The very next day, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War began. And so, in the ashes of war, Israel was born. A nation created out of the aftermath of one of the darkest periods in human history. Its birth was both a beacon of hope for many and a source of conflict that continues to this day. What happens when a new nation finds itself in a sea of hostility? In the wake of Israel's formation, a series of conflicts erupted, known collectively as the Arab-Israeli Wars. The first of these, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the War of Independence for Israelis and Nakba, or catastrophe for Palestinians, was a monumental event. It was a struggle for survival for the nascent Israeli state, facing off against the military forces of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. The war ended in 1949 with armistice agreements, but the seeds of further conflict had been sown. The Suez Crisis of 1956 marked the next significant conflict. It was a diplomatic and military confrontation involving Egypt, Israel, Britain, and France. Israel, along with Britain and France, sought to regain Western control of the Suez Canal and remove Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, who had nationalized the canal. The crisis ended with Egypt retaining control of the canal, but the tension between Israel and its Arab neighbors remained. The tension escalated into the Six-Day War of 1967. In a surprise attack, Israel managed to seize the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This territorial expansion gave rise to a new set of disputes and conflicts. The Yom Kippur War of 1973, also known as the October War, saw a coalition of Arab states led by Egypt and Syria launching a surprise attack on Israel on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. Despite initial Arab successes, the war ended in a military stalemate. It led to a shift in the dynamics of the conflict, setting the stage for future peace negotiations. The Arab-Israeli wars were more than just military confrontations. They were the manifestation of a deep-seated political, social, and cultural struggle. They were about land, identity, survival, and power. The echoes of these wars can still be heard in the ongoing conflict today, a grim reminder of a turbulent past. These wars forever shaped the landscape of the region. Can peace emerge from decades of strife and bloodshed? Let's delve into the tumultuous times of the First and Second Intifadas and the peace efforts that ensued. The First Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation, began in late 1987. This era was marked by civil disobedience, general strikes, boycotts, and a refusal to pay taxes. It was a time of stones against guns, of the oppressed standing up against their oppressors. Fast forward to the early 90s, and we witness the Oslo Accords. This was an attempt to establish a peace process, a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. Signed in Washington, D.C., the Oslo Accords were seen as a groundbreaking move towards resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Accords proposed the creation of an interim self-government for the Palestinians and set out a roadmap for further negotiations. However, the peace was short-lived. In the wake of the Oslo Accords, the Second Intifada erupted in the year 2000. This uprising was more violent, more bloody, and led to a significant loss of life on both sides. Palestinians and Israelis alike were caught in a vortex of violence that seemed to have no end. The impact of these events on the Israel-Palestine relationship was profound. The First Intifada highlighted the desperate need for change, the Oslo Accords offered a glimmer of hope, and the Second Intifada underscored the fragility of peace in a region steeped in conflict. These events have shaped the narrative of the Israel-Palestine conflict, a narrative that continues to evolve. Despite the bloodshed, the violence, the loss, there have been attempts at peace. The road to resolution has been long and fraught with challenges. Each step forward seems to be met with 2 steps back. Yet, the quest for peace persists, a testament to the resilience of those who dream of a future where Israeli and Palestinian children can grow up without fear. Attempts at peace were made, but true resolution remained elusive. Where does the conflict stand today, and what is the way forward? Now, we find ourselves in the present day, where the Israel-Palestine conflict continues to be a complex and deeply rooted issue. The status of Jerusalem, a city of immense religious significance to both Israelis and Palestinians, remains a contentious point. Israel claims the entire city as its capital, while Palestinians aspire for East Jerusalem to be the capital of their future state. The impact of the conflict on the people living in the region is profound. In the midst of political and territorial disputes, ordinary lives are often caught in the crossfire. For many, the struggle is not about politics or religion, but about basic human rights, security, and the quest for a peaceful existence. In the West Bank and Gaza, Palestinians face challenges like restricted movement, limited access to resources, and the constant threat of violence. On the other hand, Israelis live under the shadow of rocket attacks and suicide bombings, perpetuating a cycle of fear and retaliation. The path forward is far from clear, as there are various proposed solutions, each with its own set of supporters and detractors. The two-state solution, which envisages Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace, is widely accepted internationally. However, its implementation has been thwarted by numerous challenges, including settlement expansion and disagreements over borders and refugees. The one-state solution, in which Israelis and Palestinians would live together in a single democratic state, is another proposition. However, it raises questions about the preservation of a Jewish state and the realization of Palestinian self-determination. In addition to these, there are also ideas of a confederation or a binational state, each with its own complexities and challenges. In essence, the road to resolution is tangled with many obstacles, and the stakes are high. The need for dialogue, mutual understanding, and compromise has never been more urgent. It is a challenge that requires the collective will and effort of not just Israelis and Palestinians, but also the international community. A resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict remains one of the world's most pressing challenges. What have we learned from this journey through a century of conflict? We've seen the genesis, birth, and escalation of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and even the attempts at peace. It's a complex tapestry woven with strands of historical, religious, and political threads. This understanding underscores the profound need for a peaceful resolution. It's a challenging task, but not impossible. Let's remember, the shared human experience is larger than any conflict. As we look to the future, we hope for a time when peace will finally prevail in this embattled land. Before we wrap up this video, let's take a moment to reflect on the power of unity and hope. The Israel-Palestine conflict is a testament to the strength of conviction and the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the years of conflict, there are countless stories of individuals from both sides reaching out to each other, building bridges of understanding and empathy. These stories may not make the headlines, but they are the true reflections of the human capacity for love, compassion, and unity. As we turn the page on this chapter of history, let's remember these stories, the ones that remind us that our shared humanity is stronger than any division. And with that, we conclude this exploration into the Israel-Palestine conflict. We encourage you to continue seeking knowledge, asking questions, and striving for a world where understanding and peace prevail over conflict. This has been another page in the book of endless pages. Take care and good night.